Hello, welcome everyone to our summer 2024 product update. This is a very exciting webinar for two reasons. Number one, we don't just have 2 or 3 new features to show you. We have close to a dozen new features and collaborations to share. So I'm going to do some introductions in a moment. First of all, I am Rose, and I am the Senior Product Marketing Manager here. We have 2 presenters today. First up, we have Dan Coffey. He is our Senior Product Manager. He has been working so hard overseeing the creation and testing of all these new features. Dan, this is the fun part, right? You get to show the world.
Always getting there is a journey, but you have to enjoy the journey, not the destination. Isn't that what they say, Rose?
Yes. Also joining us today is Ryan Jespersen. He is our Director of Product Strategy. He is actually one of the original co-founders of the Millicast product, and it was acquired by Dolby, and he is considered by many in the industry to be an expert in WebRTC and real-time streaming. Ryan, an honor to have you here as well.
Thank you so much, Rose. And yeah, I'm looking forward to showing some of these really cool features that we've been working very hard to bring to our users.
We also are very excited because this is the most number of people we've ever had sign up for a webinar. So wherever you're joining us from today in the world, we are so happy to have you here. Ryan, go ahead. Let's kick it off.
Great. Thanks, Rose. So let's go ahead and jump into the slides. We're going to show a few features focusing on different parts of the product. And then I'm going to turn it over to Dan, who's going to actually walk us through demos, live demos of what's available within the dashboard, within the API, how to publish into Millicast. We've done a lot around SRT and many partners who have developed WHEP integrations. Plus, we've added a lot more kind of redundancy in and more tier 1 features and how you can publish into Millicast. We'll talk about some of the expansions in our cloud architecture and how we're building out our real-time streaming CDN, and then how you deliver this to clients through client-side players and SDKs that allow you to build really unique applications for your users. And finally, we'll touch on WHEP and WHEP. Our team were the original developers of WHEP and WHEP, and there's a lot of technology integrations in the market that we'll touch on to create these different use cases that our customers are using Millicast for. And this is the architecture we've been working on, everything from capture to broadcast to the Dolby Millicast service, which is this real-time streaming CDN, to the playback, decoding, and player side of it. And these are all the kind of features we're going to touch on today, many of them available through a dashboard. So it's going to be very easy for you to get up and running with your own account or use your own account to access many of the features we're going to touch on today. And with that in mind, let's go straight into the dashboard. And this is one of the new features we've launched is live monitoring. Really, with live monitoring, you know, Millicast is kind of like this black box. You can stream into us, but once it's in our CDN, in our architecture, it's always hard to know what's really happening. So we're trying to add more transparency to that. And Dan, I know you're going to show a demo of this shortly, but maybe touch on the features here.
I mean, we bring this in because, like Ryan said, with the black box is like, is it an us problem or is it a Dolby problem? You don't know. And so this is part of making that available to you, the customer, to actually see. So you get things like, where am I ingesting from? What are my ingest statistics? Is my frame rate consistent and flat? Or is it this kind of spiky mess, right? It kind of helps you identify if it's a problem that is in the Dolby service and then beyond, or if it's something kind of coming into the service as well. So a pretty flexible solution to let you know what's happening, connection logs, all the kind of ingest telemetry that you would like to have available. And we have also recently opened this up as a beta API. So it's available for free and easy to use from the dashboard, but you can also consume this data with an API if you get in touch with us.
Another feature that we've launched, this is really one of the biggest things we've been working on in the last year, is the ability to do cloud transcoding. So traditionally in Millicast, you would actually send us a stream from your source encoder. And if you did want to deliver a multi-bit rate, or what we call simulcast inside of WebRTC, you would have to do that all the way from the source. So from your source encoder, like OBS Studio, or like a hardware encoder, or even from the browser itself. But many of our customers don't want to do that directly at the source. They want to send us one high quality stream and they want us to take care of it. So maybe talk a little bit about this cloud transcoder feature, Dan.
Yeah, I think like in talking to so many customers, it depends on your workflow and what your limitations are. So we've got people in South America who want to send us contribution feeds, but they have very limited bandwidth coming out of their studio. And so they can't send us the multi-bit rate pass-through, which we've always operated in. You know, we still push that workflow. It's really something that sets us apart from all of our competitors because nobody else can do that, where you encode at the edge and then we package it together for that adaptive bit rate delivery that we all come to expect thanks to Netflix. But what this does is, again, this is an enablement feature where if you don't have that ability, you can send us that high bitrate feed. You can send us H265, which is not always compatible with WebRTC in the browser. You can send us B frames, which are also not compatible with real-time streaming. And we can take those and we can, in a very low latency encode, generate that adaptive bitrate ladder for you. So if you send us a 1080p 15 megabit stream, what we can do is we can convert that into a distribution ladder that will be sent out to our player, and it's all with just a couple frames of latency. So it's very, very fast. It's optimized for both speed and quality.
Yeah, we'll show this in the dashboard demo, but this is also available through an API. So it gives you ability to create this inside of your application. And then speaking of additional features in the dashboard, Dan and I worked together when he joined us as a product manager. I remember one of the first projects we worked on is this ability to do a multi-source or multi-view, where you want to deliver this either to your users or you're using this in a remote monitoring capacity, and you want to have these non-destructive multi-view capabilities. Well, for our customers, they could take our SDK and they could go build this, but the reality is that is only it's limited to a developer, people who have developer resources. So what we decided is, what if we can very easily point and click, and what you see is what you get, as far as creating these different sources and building this multi-viewer to use this amazing feature.
Yeah, I think what I like about this is that it's one of the complex parts of our service, right, Ryan? Like the way that you tell the service, oh, this feed is from this angle and all that. Like it's a complex thing, and we do it with a bunch of what we call publishing parameters on your RTMP or SRT URLs, and it just becomes such a burden to copy and paste them. So we said, why not make a tool that makes it really easy to build these URLs? As we add more complexity to the service, such as our backup publishing and redundancy, or we want to change the way that some of this behaves. It's much easier if there's a tool, especially as a what you see is what you get way to build encoding on the fly. And actually, we've taken some of the learnings from this and we have put it into the dashboard, which when we get to the demo, I can walk everybody through. For long-time Millicast customers, you'll see that there are some updates that have happened that we learned from using this multi-source builder and from customer feedback. So we've optimized the publishing tab as well.
So perfect. So the final feature I'll just touch on, this isn't really a sexy feature, but it's something that's extremely necessary, is if you're using an account across multiple people in the same domain. Let's say we have several large Hollywood studios as customers, and they want to be able to use a single sign-on to access that account. So this is a feature that we've built in, and here's a little kind of snippet of what this looks like when you first log in. You can use Okta, you can use your Gmail account, GitHub account, to just do a single sign-on. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and jump over, and Dan, I'll switch over to your view here.
Yeah.
And you can...
Well, just one more thing on SSO, like the other real benefit is just those password requirements, right? Your organization may have your own password requirements that are different than Dolby IO's. And so with this, by turning on SSO and turning off password login, it enforces your password policy so that whatever you need for your security team, right? You don't need to say, hey, Dolby, we have a feature request. We need to change this, right? It's just plug in your SSO provider and you're off and running with your password requirements through your SSO provider.
Absolutely. And with that in mind, I've switched over now from the slides into a live demo. So Dan, maybe walk us through some of these features.
Sure. First, the caveat, right? This is a live demo. So cut me some slack. I'm going to do my best, but I will fumble through. As Ryan knows, I am not good at talking and doing something at the same time. So we'll give it a go. What you see here is when you log in to the dashboard, this is kind of the view. I've got a bunch of tokens here because I do all kinds of streaming with our platform. But when you come in, the first thing you do is you create a token, and this is kind of your credential to be able to publish into the service. So I'm just going to call this demo token. That's my label, so I can understand what it is. We'll just call it my stream name for now. There's a bunch of advanced features in here because as part of the streaming solution, right? This platform as a solution, we can do IP address restriction. We can restrict what domains can be played back from. We can, with this new feature called Geo-Cascading, we handle the cloud-to-cloud connection as we traverse the globe, because one thing that Millicast is real time around the world. So we handle all that cloud-to-cloud architecture, but because we built the CDN, you have control over how your data flows. So if you only want to egress to certain regions, you can say, yes, I only want data to flow to Frankfurt or Ashburn or whatever you need for compliance sake. So some nice ability there. I'm going to use my account defaults, which are to cascade the stream around the globe. We also can do geo-blocking. So if you want to restrict what countries can play back your streams, this is where you configure that as well. And I like to think that we're okay at interfaces, Ryan. I mean, you know how it is, but we are an API first platform. So we first build our functionality into our API, and then we build an interface on top of it. So while this may not be pretty, everything you see that I'm doing here in the dashboard, you can also do on your own with the API. So I'll hit create here. So now that I've created my token, this is a view that most Millicast users are familiar with. I can change any of those settings down here. I can also change my account defaults as well. And then you kind of work through the workflow. So you can have your streams. A token can have multiple streams. We'll skip over that because it's only for advanced use cases. And you get to this publishing tab. So the first feature that Ryan talked about when it came to publishing was the whole new cloud transcoder that we're adding. So to use that feature, you can simply turn on transcoding. First, you need to pick a region that transcoding is supported in. So I will come back here and I will choose Ashburn, that's the closest region to me. I'll come over to publishing. I will turn on transcoding and it'll say, great, which transcoder do you want to use? And so I've already got one running where I'm going to do a little Martha Stewart and pull this out of the oven as we go, but I'll show you the process of creating a transcoder here. So I'm going to create a new transcoder. I can call it whatever I want. So I'll call this demo 2. I can, I'm locked to the region that I'm currently in. And then there's advanced features. So I can tell the service, hey, this is going to be a 60 frames per second transcoder. And I want to, we give you back a DNS name. So I want to prefix that with my own name. I'll just call it Dan Demo.
And I think a really important thing here with the transcoder is as opposed to Millicast, that's an always on service. You just stream into us and we just restream it on, through our service, through our CDN. A cloud transcoder, first of all, there's an additional cost for it because you're actually instantiating a cloud instance that does this feature. So it's important to note that there's a difference there. And then obviously the stream that comes out of the transcoder goes straight into the Millicast WebRTC CDN.
Yeah, exactly. So good points, Ryan. And because of that, right, with start automatically, I would normally hit that, I'll hit create, and it won't turn on. And I'm taken to my transcoding dashboard now. If I zoom out back to the previous view, I've got the one I pre-created. You can see I've got the stop button here because I had already started it. It's already running. And then I've got the one that I just created. But let me come now to the pull it out of the oven. We'll look at it in real time. So here are my publishing credentials for this this token, right? As we said, this is a dedicated resource. So there's a DNS name to actually get to my my stream. When I'm publishing, I can flip over to SRT mode if I'm using SRT or RTMP. So it's kind of, you can choose which one it is that you want to use. And then we tell you what ladder you're going to get. So as configured, this is the demo ladder that you're going to get. So you get 1080p at 45 kbps. And then there's advanced settings. So some of the cool stuff that we've done as well, if you really care about the highest quality, you can actually pass through the top layer on your stream. So if you configure your encoder correctly to send the right stream, you can actually encode it on a hardware encoder, something with really good quality, pass that through. We will match up that 1080p top layer and then give you the rest of the rendition. So you'd pass through the 1080 in that case, and we would generate the rest of the ladder. The idea being that for customers, your customers who are viewing and have good bandwidth and good bitrate connections to the internet, you're able to go ahead and watch the as encoded stream, right? Just kind of like Millicast used to work. And then now you have the ability to get the full ladder where we encode down rung as well. It's a little bit more complexity than I probably should have gotten into the webinar, but we have some cool stuff packaged up with this solution. So
no, I think that's great, Dan. And I think what's important here is all these kind of endpoints that you're seeing inside of the dashboard are endpoints that are available inside the API as well. So if you want to build this into your own service, it can be done very, very easily. And then now that we have a stream running, maybe we should show the live monitoring feature. I think this is one of my favorite features because it really gives you a lot of control over seeing what's running on your particular account.
Yeah, so this is the stream that I started, and I've connected to this transcoder so we can see it running here in OBS. We can do some comparisons. If I now come over here and I'm working my way down from live broadcast, I'm going to come down to live monitoring. And here we go. Here's webinar demo. So if I click into here, it takes a second, but the stream comes up and we've got this preview. So we can see just how fast this is, right? Because this is sending an RTMP connection in, transcoding the whole ladder, and then outputting it in my browser after going round trip to our server. You can see just how quick it is. It's really, really fast. And so here's what's coming in, right? This is ingest monitor. So I'm ingesting a 1080p source. It's coming from my location. And then you've got your telemetry here. So over 5 minutes, you can watch the bit rate change. I'm using variable bit rate encoding. So these are expected to be flat or to be spiky, but things like frame per second, you want this this stream to be relatively flat, right? There's some rounding and some estimation that go on from the server. So a couple spikes are okay. But if you were to see this frame rate tank, it would explain to you, hey, there's probably something going on with your encoder or your encoder's connection to the internet. So we come down here and now we can see, yep, this is where the stream started and when it connected, and you can see I started and stopped it once already. So you get a log of what happened while you were actually running the stream. No packet loss, I have a good connection to the internet. And then round trip time, if you're a broadcast person, this is a new one for you, right? This is actually the time it takes to get from your encoder location to the server, right? So it's that round trip of getting the stream through. And so you can see, again, I'm 20 milliseconds from our ingest server where I'm actually doing my transcoding. So
yeah, this is an amazing feature. I love this. And if you're running, just say you're sharing an account among an organization, you can see multiple streams that are running in there across different users. So it really gives you a really good snapshot of everything happening on your account. As far as the multi-source builder, maybe touch on that and how someone can build the multi-view really easily now inside of the dashboard.
Yeah, so here we go. This is I've stepped into my webinar demo token. Again, everything for us starts with tokens, but they're kind of ephemeral, right? You can keep them around for a long time. You can use them as a single-use token. It's up to you on how you want to use it. I can't use this one because it doesn't work with our transcoder. But what we can do is go into another token that I have. We'll turn off transcoding and the publishing, and now multi-source builder is available. So the way the multi-source builder works is I can add a source. So think of this as your main angle, your first angle. I'm going to send that in with RTMP. I'm going to hit create, and let's say I even want to do multi-bit rate. So I want to send in a high, medium, and low quality resolutions or renditions so that they can be played back by the end user. So I just add quality layers, and there we go. What's nice about this is now I can just say, export, and I get this nice text, copy pastable, emailable thing where I can say, hey, operations, here are the endpoints for the encoders. Make sure you set up encoder 1 like this, encoder 2 like this, and encoder 3 like this. You can download that, so it's very easy to use. Now, if I want to add an additional angle, and let's just look at what this looks like. Here's our multi-source player in action, right? And so I can, once this mute button goes away, I can click and I can switch, whatever angle I want to see as the end viewer. So if this was my main angle and I wanted to add one of these small tiles here, now I can say add another source. And this is going to be, oops, sorry, I'll hit cam 2, send that with RTMP. Add 3 layers, so we have 3 layers for each angle of the camera that we want. So what's nice about that is I'll reopen the tab I just closed. This big tile here consumes whatever bit rate I have available on my browser. So if I have a great connection here, yes, I'm getting the full resolution stream here, and then the lowest quality will be used here so as not to waste bandwidth. But when I click and that switch happens, this changes and goes into auto mode where it scales up and scales down based on the available bandwidth. So a few reasons to use multi-bit rate when it comes to our multi-source builder. And then if I just hold on 1 second, Ryan, pulling it all together, I can come back, I've got multiple angles, and now I can hit export all. And again, you can see how complicated this gets with how many endpoints you need to configure. And you can now do this pretty easily with a copy pastable solution with our multi-source builder.
Amazing. I think that's, just a great example of the things that we're building into the dashboard to make it more available to more users who maybe aren't as comfortable with the API calls and doing things programmatically. But speaking of APIs, we do have a couple of updates on our API as well. So one of the big ones I want to touch on before we get into live clipping is the cloud transcoder is available through an API. as well as the live monitor. So if you wanted to build a live monitor into your own dashboard, you can build that very similar user interface that we've created inside of the Millicast dashboard inside of your own product. But a feature that we've had a lot of people asking about is this ability to do live clipping. So Dan, maybe touch a little bit on kind of the use cases that you've seen with this feature that we've built.
Yeah, so you always build something for one use case, and then you start talking to customers, and they just come at you with a bunch of different uses for it. So it's been a really fun one to develop. So what it is while you're streaming to Dolby, you can then during a stream say, "Hey Dolby, I want to start and stop a clip here." So it can be 5 minutes ago to 5 seconds ago. It can be 10 minutes ago to 9 minutes ago. And the idea here is like you can pull highlights out of a stream. So if you're doing sports, right, you could pull out the goal kick, and you don't know when it's live, you'd have to be on the button and hit it just right to make sure that you captured and extracted the exact right times. But what our API does is it allows you to extract this clip based on time of day. So you can say, okay, Dolby, from 1:01 p.m. to 1:02 p.m. There's an amazing thing that happened. I want to send it to my social media channels. I want to process it for VOD delivery. It's up to you what the use case is for delivering it. And so you can do these programmatic highlights. One thing that we're looking at down the road is actually being able to stitch multiple highlights together. But again, if you're one of our customers or prospects, come talk to us. We love to partner with you and work closely, and so we can talk through what this could look like.
And Rose, I was just going to mention real quick that Rose, you wrote a really nice blog on the live clipping feature, as well as a restream feature that we'll touch on briefly. Maybe tell users about that. We'll post that link in the chat window for people to download.
Yeah, there's some really cool ways to use the live clipping. Dan touched upon a few of them, but if you are here and you're in the live auction space, one way you could use this is sometimes there's situations that rise up in the auction space where there's a viewer dispute, and you can go back and grab the exact clip of video that is in question, and you can have that as video evidence. Another great way to use it is, like Dan was saying, you can generate a lot of excitement. So while, say your stream just started or while it's running, you can grab a clip of that, you can drop it on social media and say, hey, we're live. Or again, in the auction space, as an example, you can say, we have this classic car, it's up for bid right now, join us right now, this auction is only 30 minutes. So it's a really smart way to use this to generate excitement across platforms. And as Dan also touched on too, you can go back and pull clips and make highlight reels, live dealer casinos. You can maybe grab the win of the day that was really exciting, and continue to use to regenerate this video for other content down the road.
Absolutely. Yeah. And Dan, I'll switch over to your view now. You can kind of walk through a demo of this. And I know that Postman isn't the most sexy product to demo as you do API calls, but I think you can do a pretty good job of showing us how this live clipping works in action.
Yeah, so I'll pull this up, and just to close out what Rose said, like I said, it's interesting when you build a feature and you start hearing from customers about it. That audit use case is the one that came up that we never expected. So totally you can audit. And what's nice about our solution is you can do this during a stream. So you don't need to wait till the stream ends to be able to pull a clip out. You can pull out anything from 5-10 seconds ago will be readily available with the API to be able to pull a clip. But yeah, so I will do my best now to make Postman look really good, as Ryan said. So I'm going to pull it up here. I've got my Postman. And so let's look at the documentation for a second. If I come over to my, here's our documentation for media assets and clips. So you can create a clip and you simply provide there's a bunch of stuff. So you can drill down if you're doing multi-source, you can drill down and say, hey, give me this angle of this clip, lots of stuff like that. But by default, give us a stream name, really easy. And then give us a start time and a stop time, right? And those are ISO 8601 format. So I have to use a cheating tool here. I'll reload this. And then now that I've got the start time, I'm going to just copy this out of here. And I'll come over to Postman. So this is my Postman that I've got built for our live clipping. And so I've got webinar demo, which is the stream I've got running over here. And if you'll notice, I've got this little world clock. So what time is it right now as we're recording this demo? There's the timestamp. And then I will hit that as the start time, paste. And then now we'll go ahead and hit reload here. Tell me to turn off my ad blocker. And I'll come back to Postman and paste in the end time. There is a minimum duration of 10 seconds. That's the minimum. You've got, it looks like it didn't copy. So we'll just change oh no, it did. So we're going from 10 seconds after to 44 seconds after. And now if I hit send, there we go. The clip is in progress. Here's my media asset ID. All right, so now if I come over here to my list files and I hit send for the webinar demo, I can get the ID of that clip. You can see it was a successful clip, and then I can actually get the file. So I put that number in here, I hit send, I get a download link, and then if I download that clip, I'll bring it onto this desktop, and let's compare. This is much easier when you do it programmatically. So we said create live clip. Okay, and it was from 1910:10 to 1910:44. And let's see, so starting here 19 or 15, it's because it's correcting my time zone, but 10, and this is just, we're 6 frames off because there's a little bit of alignment here as we sent the request. And then we want to go to 44. And there we go, 43 and change. So we're right there at the correct duration for that live clip. And again, this all happens really quickly so that you can send out the highlight to be posted on social media or processed elsewhere.
And at that point, you can see the endpoint here that we're storing this on Amazon S3, but you can easily move this file over to another cloud storage and have your own VOD playout or VOD delivery system for these clips. So that's not part of our service right now. It just allows you to make the clip, and then obviously you can go put it elsewhere.
Well, and actually what you can do is if you want to, you can actually write this at the time of requesting the clip to your own bucket. So we do have the ability to configure that.
Exactly. Well, perfect. So let's go ahead and jump back into the slides. I think at this point, we can actually talk about some of the other features that we have available more on the publishing side. How can you get content into Millicast? So a few updates here. This is kind of what I referenced at the top of the webinar, is there are some features that have really matured the Millicast offering to be a more tier 1 service. So maybe talk a little bit about redundant ingest, Dan.
Yeah, I mean, this is really in that kind of high availability category. So you've got a mission critical stream that cannot go down no matter what. And I think the way that we've solved this problem is actually kind of unique. So, you know, when you think of, oh, dual publish, I'm going to solve this problem by just sending 2 highly available streams. So you're active publishing. That's not novel, but what we have is the ability to control which one's primary, which one's backup, and you can actually take a layered approach. So you could actually do 3 different publishing into 3 different regions of Millicast for an ultra critical situation. And all you have to do is tell us what the priority value of your stream is. So you say, my primary is value 1000, my backup is priority 1, highest number wins. And if we have any problem with the encoder that's publishing and that goes down, we'll automatically switch over within a second over to your backup. So it's really fast. It will move all of your viewers for you. And then if you want to bring your stream back on, all you need to do is reconnect your stream. And something that we're working on as a future feature related to this is the ability to tell the API, hey, this stream is unhealthy, take it offline, or go ahead and now it's healthy again, we've stabilized the encoder, go ahead and bring it back online. So we'll be allowing API control over that as well.
Yeah, and you know, as we mature the platform too, we've always been really top on security. Like, how can you secure your stream, both from contribution as well as from a distribution perspective? We do a lot of things around encryption and around creating kind of token protection. So talk about the evolution of that within this feature.
Yeah, I mean, it started off very simply. It was, hey, we need to protect our streams, token protection, you know, pretty straightforward. But the thing that we've added that's relatively new is the ability to self-sign your own token. So you can create a token with the API, but you don't want to, like, if you have, you know, 100,000 viewers connecting to Millicast, you don't want to call our API 100,000 times to get tokens for every single viewer. And so what we've done is we've created this ability to self-sign your own tokens so that you can take a token created by the API, use that as our shared secret, and then pass to your application or generate in your application these self-signed tokens. And these are short-lived tokens that are meant to be just for the time for the viewer to connect to the stream. Once they're connected, the token can expire, but the viewer will remain connected to the stream until they disconnect or try to reconnect, and then they'll need to get another token.
And then part of publishing too, you know, we became a part of the SRT Alliance, I think about a year and a half ago. And the funny thing there is you know, careers come full circle. I was at Wowza when we partnered with Haivision to Jedi mind trick them into open sourcing SRT. And it's become so ubiquitous. There are over 600 members now, and we've built SRT in for well over a year now, and we have quite a few. We'll talk a little bit more about Haivision and some integrations we have with their products. But this passphrase encryption just takes it a step further, right, Dan?
Yeah, I mean, this is a standard SRT feature, but what it does is it allows, what we'll do in our case is we'll tell you what the passphrase is. It's a shared secret based on the token. And this is really to prevent man-in-the-middle attacks, right? So you don't have Ryan publishing and me saying, oh, I'm the Dolby server, right? You've got this secret that if we don't share that kind of password, if you will, the passphrase, then you won't be able to connect. So it kind of removes any question of security on connecting to the service. And then once we convert that into WebRTC in our service, WebRTC is also encrypted end-to-end. So what you have is a fully end-to-end encrypted service where the only transition that happens is when we take it from SRT and package it as WebRTC.
And then, once again, talking about full circle, everyone thought that RTMP was maybe going away. It's been around for, over like 25 years now. And yeah, it's just really interesting to see the evolution of RTMP to adopt newer video codecs. And we've always done a lot around AV1. Sergio, our director of engineering, one of the co-founders of Millicast, was one of the first to get real-time AV1 encoding in the browser. So to just go back to these broadcast protocols and be accepting newer standards is actually a really fun thing to be adding to the platform.
Yeah, well, I mean, Ryan, I think you've been around Wowza days and since, and you've seen it all, right? But AVC throughout the whole time has been the one constant, right? H264 is the codec that just won't die. So everybody now, I think, is starting to get wise, and as chips and mobile phones and processors become faster and have hardware decoding built in, the expectation for quality is rising. So we're happy to be part of this step forward in supporting more modern codecs.
I think the important thing is, AV1 started with trying to get wide adoption on the decoder side before they started on the publishing or encoding side. Really, the biggest step this year has been Apple adding AV1 decode inside of the iPhone and iOS. So that's really, you started to see a lot of very large platforms now starting to adopt AV1 end-to-end. This gives you a pathway to do that. And then similarly on the H265 side is, we obviously are part of Dolby, and Dolby has its own standards around HEVC. And this creates a pathway to get sources that can support some of these higher end standards for both AV1 and H265. So it's really an exciting piece to add to the ways we can publish into Millicast. And this is a feature that you touched on this earlier, is maybe touch on really briefly the benefit of doing low latency RTMP. A lot of people may not be aware of what this actually does.
Yeah, well, if you think, Ryan, I've heard you tell the story countless times, the days of Flash when live was live, and then we artificially added latency by introducing this CDN-based approach with chunked media, and live went from live in real time down to 30, 60-second delay, and now we're all backpedaling and trying to make it faster again over standard architecture. But what this feature does specifically is it reduces the buffer size that's set with RTMP. So depending on your connection, it may be if you want to get down to lower latency and you have a good enough contribution connection to our service, you can turn on this flag and it'll reduce the RTMP buffer, which just means your video is delivered faster because it's processed through the platform even more quickly. We've watched a lot of production traffic as we've enabled this feature, and so we think it's a really good setting for most use cases to turn this on. We've made it default when you create a new token to turn it on, and we're also going to be rolling out the same thing for SRT. So the SRT buffer size, I forget what they recommend. They recommend like seven times RTT, some enormous number, but in reality, with a good connection, you can absolutely dial that value down. So we're just making this available in the service as well.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing as we talk about WHEP and WebRTC contribution and compare that to RTMP is, having RTMP support is so ubiquitous. There's so many devices out there that have it. By adding this low latency, you can not have to add a WebRTC stack or WHEP to your, not just legacy, but to your workflow and still be able to publish into Millicast. So we're trying to support all these different standards. So those are a few of the publishing updates. We'll talk more about WHEP and WEP here in a bit, but I wanted to kind of focus on some of the things that we already discussed earlier on. And Rose, from your end, one of the blogs that you wrote was not just on live clipping, but you also included some of the features about restreaming. Maybe talk about some of the things you found in your article then.
Yeah, sure. Well, I think one of the most interesting business value points of restreaming, the fact that you can send this out to multiple platforms at once, you obviously can grow your audience. But it's important to remember that different platforms have different user demographics. So it's really smart for you to use this feature. It allows you to engage with a more diverse audience and ultimately increase your overall revenue through subscriptions or ad interactions. So you combine live clipping with restreaming. The live clipping tool, we talked about that already. You can pull a snippet. Now you can grab that little clip from that video and you can use the restreaming tool and send it out to multiple platforms globally and just really, really boost your audience size.
Yeah, I mean, love it or hate it, right? Social media is with us, and that's where people's eyeballs are. And so you get people on the platform where they are, and you move them over to your platform when you're ready to monetize them. I think that's the play.
Yeah, and I think the real key here is even if you're using a separate traditional live streaming service, you have a use case that requires real time, and it's most important that you get it into Millicast first for delivering that real time content, but then you can still restream it onto those other more latent workflows, whether that be social media, the YouTube lives, Facebook lives, whatever it happens to be. It really gives you a pathway to do that, but still get your content to us first because real time is more important. And then as far as, so how do people use this, Dan? How do they use the restream feature?
Yeah, so you turn it on again in Millicast speak, right? This is part of your publishing token. So you create an RTMP endpoint, and whenever you start streaming to us, we start streaming concurrently out to your platform as well. So it's kind of you turn your encoder on, and boom, you're into multiple platforms at the same time. The other piece that we've seen need for this is people who are selling their streams. So if you're creating content and you've got distribution rights across multiple parties and platforms or operators, this is a very common way to relay your stream for those who use their own player or their own live streaming workflow or their own monetization channel. So it's, again, RTMP being so ubiquitous is that path that most people are using today.
Yeah, and I think it's good you mentioned that. Like here, this WebRTC is obviously our real-time streaming service. This is separate because this is going outside of our network. So you can syndicate this to other customers, but we do have separately a syndication ability within this WebRTC CDN, and we'll touch on that here in an upcoming slide. But as far as data centers, really, as we've built out this black box that is our real-time streaming CDN, I think this is probably the most exciting thing that we've been doing to really mature the Millicast platform. And since being acquired by Dolby, we've really spent a lot of our time trying to deploy and grow our Origin Edge network globally. So touch on that a little bit, Dan.
Yeah, I mean, it's like it goes back to the map you had on the first workflow slide that we call it the workflow slide. But that is really what it is. Like WebRTC gets a bad rap because it's not broadcast quality or it doesn't scale, and like those things are frankly not true. It's all about how you build the network and how you architect the service. So we are highly scalable. We are very low latency, and we are broadcast quality. That's the way we like to think about our service. And part of it is by putting the edge as close to your viewers as possible. When you're close to the edge server, right, just same performance on a CDN, you get the benefits of being close. So there's pieces built into WebRTC that make that connection much more smooth and stable by being closer to your edge viewers. And the other side of this is what we talked about earlier, Ryan, which is where we give the viewer or the customer control about where their data is going to flow. So you can choose of our regions which ones to put the data through and which ones not to. So if you don't want to stream outside of a certain geographical area, we can stop that. Or if you want to only have data processing happen in Europe, for example, you can also control that completely with the CDN on a token by token basis, not just globally for your account.
Yeah, and I think the key, I moved over to the geo-cascading, but the data center, a good example is like London. Like you have actual content rights only in a particular country, or because of legal reasons. Maybe you're doing a betting app and you legally cannot have any of that data outside of your region. This is a big reason we can do this now, both in the API and within the dashboard. And similar to that, an extension of that is this idea of geo-cascading. And you can create an origin that's geographically close to your source, but then be able to use our origin edge network to deliver that. And the edge delivery then comes from a regional or local location to where a viewer is located. So maybe talk a little bit about geo-cascading. You showed it a little bit in your dashboard demo, but maybe touch on that.
Yeah, well, it's that control about where your data is going to flow. So, I talked just a moment ago about your viewer being closest to the edge. So, how do you get closest to the edge? You be physically proximal. And so, what's nice is we can work with customers. We can do private deployments in certain areas if there's a certain place that they're trying to target. But we have this global footprint where you're as close as possible. The same is not just true for the edge egress, right, from your viewer connecting. It's also for publishing, right? You don't want to have a massive distance to travel when you're trying to send your stream in. With RTMP and SRT, there's some protocol benefit to those that are a slightly higher latency with a little bit more resiliency baked in as well.
Yeah, I think what's key to this workflow is we're still honoring that kind of half-second globally at scale architecture that is what really differentiates Millicast from other more traditional live streaming or low latency live streaming services. And then similar to the Geo-Cascade, now you can also geo-block. Now, you've been able to do this in Millicast for a while, but you can also Geo-Cascade and geo-block based on the token. And this is especially true for content rights. As we get into more and more users that are doing sport betting, as an example, you license those rights from a large organization like La Liga or the NFL, and you only have rights to do it in a particular spot. We have the ability to do this by a variety of ways, both through the dashboard as well as through the API.
Yeah, I like to think of when I think of security, right? It's different customers have different needs, and we like to see ourselves as this kind of platform solution where whatever you need, we've got it. So if you need the ability to block things at a country level, we've got it. If you want to restrict playback domain, we've got it. If you don't need any of those things, no problem. If you need to control where your data is flowing in the CDN, we've got it. So it's all very easy and programmatic, and being able to be done with the API to have full control over where your data is flowing and how you're protecting it.
Perfect. So that's just some of the updates on our cloud architecture. We'll touch really briefly on some of the client-side updates we've done. I think the most useful one is really analytics. We've always not had a great offering when it comes to viewer analytics based on any of our clients. So we've done an integration earlier this year with DataZoom, and then using DataDog as a provider to be able to create your own analytics dashboard. So maybe touch on that, Dan.
Yeah, well, that client-side analytics is always, should we do it ourselves or not? But there are industry experts who exist for this kind of thing. DataZoom is a great example of that. So we've got that integration with them. They have a collector for Dolby Millicast where you simply drop the data collector into the client-side application that you've built, and then hook up whatever backend you want, and you've got a ton of control over putting together all the statistics that you want to track. It's also possible to use a direct integration with something like DataDog, but you don't get the expertise that comes along with the DataZooms of the world. So when you really want to understand in real time or semi-real time what your customer's viewing experience is like, this is a great way to go about it.
Yeah, and I can see a lot of product maturity coming from this, making the analytics a little bit more accessible, maybe through our own dashboard. So I think watch this space for maybe future product developments within the Millicast product. Not to put you on the spot there, Dan. I think one of the other interesting things we've been working on is this interactive SDK. And Rose, I know you've done a lot of work on the marketing side to kind of promote this and work with customers on it. Maybe tell us a little bit about it, what this actually is.
Well, what this says is it allows the viewers to not just be a passive viewer during a live sporting event, because nowadays there's such a short attention span, especially with our Generation Z crowd out there, that they actually demand constant entertainment and interaction possibilities. So this SDK allows you to watch with other people. As you can see in the example here, you can speak to each other through the WebRTC SDK. You can do the live chat. You can take part in polls, trivias. You can predict the next play. And it just makes every second of the game more exciting and more interesting. And it keeps your viewers engaged from start to finish. And that is the powerful use for this. And I love that we're showing all these features. It's so cool to see how they work. But I do think it's really important to keep going back to the business value of all these features. So this one, again, just like several others we've shown you, the idea here is how do you boost your global viewership? How do you get them to stay as long as possible? And ultimately, that will translate to additional revenue for you.
Yeah, and I think I do want to give credit to Videon, our partners at Videon. This is their slide that that we've been able to borrow to show some of this interactivity. But here you can see the multi-viewer at work that Dan showed earlier. You can build a multi-viewer, but then the SDK allows you to build other features around this viewer experience that creates more interactivity in the way you may want to stream this, either for an e-gaming or esports use case, or auctions, or whatever it happens to be.
Yeah, I think like Ryan used the word maturity before, right? And seeing the platform mature, that's what this is for me. So this isn't actually a brand new product, right? We don't give you what you see on screen out of the box, but what we give you is that we are the platform to be able to build it. So this SDK is built to actually abstract a lot of the complexity of video tracks and audio tracks and all that. Like this lets you think about it in the way of, I have, this person that I want to show, right? One thing that we have that's awesome about Millicast is this interactive speed, right? We are fast enough to be able to talk to one another at scale and do it globally. And so what this does is it allows you to put together the power of our multi-view with the abstraction of not having to think about things from a very video implementation centric viewpoint, but actually an interactive viewpoint. And so it does a lot of the connection handling and all of that for you. So it's a really kind of maturing of the feature of multi-view, I think.
Yeah, and this is a web or JavaScript SDK. We have a lot of other SDKs, as you guys are probably well familiar. We're not going to touch on all of them today, but everything from native SDKs to React Native or Vue.js, like frameworks that sit on top of those web SDKs. So there's a real maturity there with the products. And let's touch really quickly on DRM as we talk more about tier 1 solutions that require, Hollywood grade industry standard security. What are some of the DRM features? I know this is something we're rolling out here in the near future.
Yeah, so this is, we have it limited availability. We're demoing it with some early customers, but this is exactly what Ryan said. It's industry standard DRM. We're working with a partner, Castlabs, to actually do the implementation of that. And if you are familiar with the DRM space, Castlabs is a very well-known name, so you can absolutely trust that it is a critical piece of security infrastructure. So what this does is we are offering this as a fully managed DRM solution. So you simply come in, and once we're done, you'll be able to, in the dashboard, say, yes, turn on DRM. When a viewer, when you connect your stream to us, we will start applying DRM encryption at the media server where we ingest the stream. And then all of your viewers on the playback side will be able to connect and will be protected with DRM as well. And so really, like, what is the thing that you get out of this? If you're not familiar, it prevents screenshots, prevents restreaming, and screen recording. So really raises the bar significantly on security. We have a bunch of customers in the remote post-production space who do collaborative editing, some platforms that run on us, and this is a huge feature for that crowd as well. So it's either you're in the broadcast sports space where this is a requirement for the terms of your contract, or you're protecting Hollywood grade post-production content. Those are the two main use cases for this. But like I said, when you go out and you talk to customers about what you're working on and what you're doing, you find other use cases as well. So we found even people in the remote monitoring space. So you think about like drones and security, and just having one more layer of encryption on top of the stream, and the inability for someone to come up and take a screenshot of it. It's a really powerful feature that, again, is finding uses that we never even thought of.
And speaking of those uses, let's talk about some technology integration. So, as you guys may know, the kind of core Millicast came out of it was an acquisition that Dolby made, and Sergio, my colleague, wrote these two specs on WHEP and WHEP that help on the contribution side of WebRTC to standardize how you send a WebRT stream between a encoder and a server, or a client-side device and a server on the contribution side. And then WHEP does the same on the distribution side, where we can send it from a media server to a player and use a standard to do that. And as it relates to WHEP and WHEP, there's some really interesting updates. So probably the biggest one is OBS Studio. So Millicast, we actually forked OBS Studio going back about 4 or 5 years ago, and we added the WebRTC stack as a way to do real-time streaming from OBS. And we just used our own, Millicast client connection in between OBS and Millicast. But then we decided, well, it would be great if WHEP made it in there. So a few people in the industry actually had more influence than us with OBS. And the core OBS project now has added a WebRTC stack as well as a WHEP standard contribution. And then one of our colleagues internally at Dolby has actually added a Dolby Millicast endpoint inside of that. So Fabian from our solution engineering team has written that. So you can see here in the screenshot, and I'll maximize the view of this. You can see right here that you can actually select Dolby Millicast as a service now. This is true as of about a month ago. And you can choose the server location for your ingest as well as your stream key that you generate from Millicast. And this allows you to very easily, within the core OBS project, send a stream over WHEP into Dolby. And then the WHEP integration that's available down here, if you just choose WHEP as an endpoint, that's available as of version 30 inside of OBS Studio. So quite a few updates. We have received feedback from a couple of customers that our forked version of OBS Studio is still faster. And that's probably based on the different WebRTC implementations in between our version or the core version. But the reality is nowadays you can actually stream directly from OBS with WHEP, which is a big advancement for WHEP as a standard. I don't know if you have anything to add to that. I know that's all very complicated. That's several updates in one. But OBS is still the world's most popular free software encoder. So
yeah, I think probably one of the questions is, hey, what is your plan for your version of OBS in the future, the forked version? And the short version is we're waiting for OBS proper to catch up. So the one other feature that's missing notably is WebRTC simulcast. And so as we talked earlier about the multi-bitrate contribution and the adaptive bitrate playback on the client side, that's the feature that's missing from OBS. And I'm sure it's not too far behind. So once that's there, I think the mainline OBS will be in pretty good shape.
Speaking of really interesting workflows, Dan, I know you've been working very closely with our colleagues over at Amino. Maybe talk a little bit about our integration with this set-top box.
Yeah, so for those who are unfamiliar in the digital signage space and the kind of physical playback space, you can imagine in stadiums, you can imagine in betting shops. There's a bunch of different use cases where you need to deploy a physical hardware box that's connected to a TV. Pretty much anywhere satellite exists, this would be an amazing replacement for it, to replace satellite with a lower cost IPTV type solution, but where it's over the public internet, and it's our unicast solution kind of overlaid as a multicast solution. So anyway, that's a lot of talking to say. I have an Amino H200 sitting right here. Hopefully you can see that on screen. I'll actually move my webcam. Forgive the mess. If you work in production, you've got cameras and technology strewn about as well. So on my laptop here, I've got the same stream that we were playing before from OBS. It's still running off of my laptop. But if you look back here, I've got the same thing, which is playing back off that Amino H200 unit. And so we've done a native integration with the Amino team. So they've taken our software and put it into their actual firmware release. So we get all the benefits of native playback. They're using our native C++ SDK to do this. And what this does is it gives us a lot of power and control, which can be used to play back on a physical device. So one of the benefits of Amino is that they have this fleet management tool called Orchestrator. And so with Orchestrator, you can do updates, you can configure channels, you can do all kinds of things as far as managing thousands and thousands of these units distributed around the globe. You can force updates, and playback is as simple as plugging in a Dolby URL into their Zapper. So if you know Amino, you probably are familiar with the Zapper app. It's a simple configuration for channel management, channel up, channel down. And so Dolby IO and Millicast is now a part of the Zapper app, so you can channel up and channel down. And coming soon, I'm really excited to say we're going to introduce a really, really, really slick feature that'll let you consume multiple streams, 1, 2, 3, or 4 on screen at the same time. So look for that in an upcoming update as well.
Yeah, I think this is exciting. It just shows the maturity of when I was at Wowza like many years ago. I remember a big part of our client base was IPTV networks, and almost like closed circuit TV networks. You still see a lot of it with IP cameras. You see a lot of it with these betting shops that are like off Main Street betting shops in the UK, people running things internally in a stadium. And instead of doing these locally, which are harder to scale and harder to, sometimes support, these networks are extremely expensive from an IPTV perspective. And these days, the hardware side of it, the decoder side of it, they're stuck in the past using old video codecs and old protocols that are expensive to maintain at the networking layer. It's easier to go cloud. And this is really where the differentiation is in rolling this box out and replacing a satellite system. You see even DirecTVs and Dish Networks of the world kind of being left behind by the proliferation of OTT networks that are just so much cheaper to run. This is the same, but in a real-time use case for doing the examples that Dan has given. So I really think this is the beginning of a big revolution. And something that Amino does too is digital signage. Like real-time streaming can be used to deliver digital signage to Zara stores all around the world, like at a fraction of the cost of doing that through any other kind of network. So I think a lot more to come as it relates to this. And we hope to do a lot more with the Amino team.
Yeah, and the other thing is this box is positioned as a feature box as well. It has AV1 decode, it has H265 decodes. There's lots of, the things that we talked about in advancing video technology, right? It's all ready to go in a plug and play format. There's zero development from your team to actually use this. It's about adding a new configuration to Amino Orchestrate to be able to run Dolby just like that.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point. It kind of fired off another thought, which is, we have a lot in remote production, either live REMI production or remote post-production, is a lot of our encoder partners have sold decoders for many years that do this through an SDI output or HDMI output for a lot higher price point than you can get with a commodity hardware box like Amino provides, so
yeah it's like you use Apple TV for this today, but you got to be like, navigate to the app and hit this button, right? With this, you literally can configure it and say just plug it into the network and plug it into the power and your TV, and boom, the channel will come up as soon as the client connects. So it's really powerful.
Exactly. A couple of other updates here. We'll go through it quick because I know we're running short on time, but this is one of my favorite. We've been doing a lot of drone use case over the last couple of years. I've been working closely with DJI, and they finally added a WHEP implementation. The caveat here, it's not on the drone itself, it's in the DJI dock. So the dock actually creates a local network between the drone and the dock itself. The dock encodes, obviously it has more processing power than the drone would itself. So it will encode in WebRTC and send WHEP from the DJI dock. And this is available as of the dock 2, the release April 7th of this year. And that could stream WHEP directly out. So we have a few customers that are using this already, but it's the beginning of kind of the autonomous vehicle use case for real-time streaming. You can now control this drone from halfway across the world. We have customers that do this for deploying drones for commercial use cases or civil engineering use cases. You need to go and look at an oil rig in the Gulf of Mexico. Instead of sending a helicopter out, you can now do this with a drone and remote control it from anywhere in the world as a service. So these are some really interesting use cases. And the autonomous vehicle side of it is interesting. Is how can you build this across the cloud to have resiliency in the way you send signals out directly from a device or a drone. And then another one we've worked with is Haivision. We've been partnering with Haivision since the SRT Alliance. We've had SRT integration with the Makito, but they've just launched the StreamHub. And right now the Olympics are going on, and the StreamHub product has been used to grab encoder feeds from the surfing that's happening in French Polynesia and streamed all the way back to backhauling those signals. So in this use case, you're sending SRT streams from the StreamHub product. That's a WebRTC product. And it's streaming into Millicast so that we can actually provide a real-time monitor for those encoder feeds. So this is an integration that we have. We have a couple of articles that I'll post here on how you can integrate both your Makito encoder as a field encoder, as well as the StreamHub product itself. And then we have another integration with WebRTC, with Teradek Prism. And this Prism also can do a WHEP output directly from the device itself. And we've always had an integration with Teradek on the RTMP side with low-latency RTMP as well. But now you can do a WHEP integration to create more of that quick output for remote use cases or remote monitoring as well. And that is pretty much it. And then maybe, Rose, you can touch on where people can find us and the call to action here. Oh, you're on mute, Rose. I'll edit that out.
If you're a current customer and you would like to know how to access some of these features, you can reach out to your account executive. If you are someone who is not a customer yet, hopefully we've changed your mind today. We did share a lot of information with you. And if you are not technical and you're not familiar with a lot of the demos that we were sharing, please do not be intimidated by this technology. You just give us access to your live stream, and we really have the team of experts here that can have you up and streaming in a very short time. But you can go to our website and you'll see a lot of buttons all on every single web page. You can arrange a free consultation with one of our streaming experts. You can ask us any questions you want. You can ask questions in the comments, by the way. We will get to those here at the end. But reach out for a free consultation. Let us know what you'd like to build. A lot of technical features today, but again, the take home here is, what is the business value to you? How can you secure your stream? How can we make this easier for you? How can you grow your audience globally? And ultimately, how can you increase your revenue?
Yeah, and we're looking forward to being at IBC next month. So we're almost about a month away, 6 weeks away. So you can scan this QR code, set up a meeting with us, or like Rose mentioned, we can be available for a call to jump on and talk about these different real-time use cases. But Dan, as always, thanks for joining, and you as well, Rose.
Thanks, guys. Great to see you.
All right, we'll see you all next time. Thank you so much.